Hi, I am Mrinalini Ghadiok. I am an architect, writer, and curator practicing as an independent consultant based in New Delhi, India. I will be presenting episode 2 of the virtual lighting design community. The topic of this episode is the business of lighting design, and the title of my talk is Size and Location, an Evolving Perspective. Having worked in architecture, lighting design, historical research, and writing for more than a decade, 6 years ago, I shifted focus to the narrative of design and architectural experiences, stepping into publishing as the founding editor of Mondo Arc Journal in India and stirworld.com. My foray into print and digital media, along with curatorial practices over the years, has paved the way for a deeper exploration of design mechanisms and a curiosity for designers' journeys and processes. Therefore, today, my presentation stems from an inquiry into whether size and location really matter for the success of lighting designers. And to address this, I will be speaking about practices that have translated creativity into successful businesses. There could be a designer sitting in a basement apartment doing great work. And at the same time, there could be a designer occupying a swanky corner office within prime real estate of a big city, also doing great work. Who is to say who is more successful and what brings them that success? So the question then becomes, what does one define as success? And of course, what does one do to achieve it? Let's get a quick glimpse at lighting designers across the world. Referring to data collected by the International Lighting Design Survey by Dark Media, we can see that of the nearly 1,700 lighting design practices in the world, 29% are in mainland Europe, 26% in the US, and 13% in the UK. However, it is interesting to see that the highest concentration of lighting designers are in the city of London, followed by New York and Hong Kong. So then we question, what makes these cities such nerve centers for lighting designers? And the answer really boils down to opportunities. These cities are major educational centers for architecture and lighting design. They have a high concentration of architects, which provides opportunities for projects and possibilities for collaborations. There is enough room for everyone to grow. These are developed and evolved design-centric cities that value design-affiliated services such as lighting. Plus the fact that they are rich urban centers, they can afford services such as lighting design, which are often considered luxuries. This makes them fertile ground for launching new careers for young professionals, as well as propagating established practices. To address my subject today, I invited 4 lighting designers from different corners of the world, ranging from Australia to Europe to South America. They all have or continue to interact with some of the big global nerve centers in one way or the other. All 4 come with varied experiences globally, have chosen to settle in different cities, do very different kinds of work in diverse environments, studio types, and styles, and are at different points of their career. I'd like to thank all 4 of them, starting with Emra Baki Ulas from Steenson and Warming, based in Sydney, Anas Boku, who runs AS Light and is based in Athens as well as London, Tapio of LDC and Scandal Technologies, based in Madrid, but with studios in Helsinki and London, and Claudia Paz, based in Lima, Peru, and running her own studio called Claudia Paz Lighting Studio. So diving right into where it all stems from, London. What does it mean to be located in the heart of the mothership? Anna, who was practicing as an interior architect in Greece before pursuing a master's degree in lighting design at the Bartlett, shares that it really depends on what you do with your time in a nerve center like London. A design hub provides you with structure, systems, safety nets, and backup, and sets very high standards. But most importantly, there are enough lighting designers there to create a community, establish a profession, and make it the norm. You don't have to step into a meeting and begin to explain the reason for your existence, which is something that I believe many lighting designers would identify with. This, however, is not a starting point that everyone enjoys. There are parts of the world where lighting design as a profession or even a service is hardly known, let alone the choice of practicing it in different formats, a luxury that is clearly afforded in London. Whether you create a niche, specialize in a typology, or avail the myriad technologies at hand, London for a lighting designer is an absolute playground. Anna says that using London as a starting point gave her invisible wings that in any other place she wouldn't have had. or would have had to build up very slowly to come to feel that she can expand or grow or move out eventually. Emra, an electrical engineer who decided to pursue architectural lighting design after dabbling in stage lighting in Turkey, also talks about design hubs being launchpads for careers, because that is where the options, positions, and again, opportunities are. However, we also spoke about how difficult it is to leave those elements behind, especially when you are there at that particular moment, looking through that particular lens. To find locations that perhaps suit you better is quite a challenge. Emra found himself in Sydney 15 years ago and has chosen to live and practice there since. He finds the city balanced. It is in tune with nature and has great weather. It is connected, but not within the chaos of a large nerve center, which he says is important for him and makes him a better designer. Anna, too, having worked in London, relocated to Athens. She believes that once you achieve your goals in the big city and have built your foundations, you can use that momentum to move on, for it is not the ideal environment to be creative, flexible, or free. And for her, that was key. With changing priorities, I guess, come changes in location as well. But how do different locations affect us differently? Tapio is a strong believer that your context shapes your thinking. Also a graduate of the Bartlett in London, Tapio worked for many years in the city before deciding to relocate to Madrid, where he eventually established his own practice, the LDC, which is the Lighting Design Collective. The move was predominantly personal, but he admits that if he had stayed in London, things would have happened faster. And that is because there is just so much going on there all the time. There would have been certain pushes and much impetus. In Madrid, on the other hand, which is where he is now, there is not much happening in his immediate environment, which may affect business momentum, but on the other hand, gives him the mind space to do things differently. Since Anna has one foot in London and one in Athens, I asked how different the two environments have been to work with. Straight faced, she said, I could crack jokes in meetings in Athens, but I could not do that in London. London has a very specific structure and code, which is blindly followed. Anything that sways away from that stands out, which is not necessarily good or bad. But as UK culture goes, standing out is an awkward place to be in. On the other hand, in Athens, everyone stands out, doing their own thing in their own way, without structure, but within chaos. Anna enjoys working with this chaos, but pitch perfect London is too square for her. It obviously helped her putting things together, putting a structure, making it clearer. But Athens is more loose and flexible, and this has an effect on the result of her projects as well. She says, in Athens, you may get an opportunity to do something a little more out there or crazy, while in London, the chances are that at the last minute, the contractor may intervene, value engineer, and complete the project, and you in an instant lose something. Emra expressed an unusual but fascinating take on cultural differences and their effect on his practice. Having grown up across a Middle Eastern and European context, he talked about the history of a place. When there is a lot of history, there is also a lot of depth to anything that you do. But along with that comes a certain structure where things are set in their own way, whether it's the way people think or act, their expectations, and even their appreciation. There tend to be complexities stemming from layers of culture and history. Moving to Australia for Emra was a positive surprise. There is a common adage there, which goes, everything or everyone has a fair go. This enabled Emra to shed his histories and free himself of his strings. He shared that in this part of the world, people say there is less history, but that also facilitates a freedom to think out of those bounds. The can-do attitude and confidence that young designers have there has given him the freedom and the feeling that he can do whatever he wants and take over the world. While Australia is a step removed from the hustle and bustle of European design chaos, South America is a step even further. Claudia studied architecture in Lima, and although she did not train or work in a big design hub initially, she made it a point to travel and experience these places as frequently as she could. Her take on lighting design as a profession is unique in this case, for when she set foot into the lighting world, she was faced with many challenges. As per her, big cities and design hubs have money and clients that are aware of practices such as lighting design. It is an accepted norm, and therefore it is easy for designers to practice there. In small cities, however, due to the lack of awareness, lighting is considered a luxury, if at all. The struggle to convince clients of its value is real. Not only did Claudia have to build her own career, she had carte blanche to define what lighting design as a profession could or would mean for Peru. Her journey began by taking photos of buildings and photoshopping them to create simulations of what they would look like if treated with professional lighting tools. She would take these images and knock on clients' doors to show how lighting application could transform their projects. So while Anna moved to Athens for flexibility, Tapio found headspace in Madrid, and Emra established balance in Sydney. Claudia worked her way in Lima to bring the profession to light. Each of these designers have had unique experiences, and their journeys have mapped various locations over the years. What is common, though, is the idea of taking these experiences and making them what Anna calls travelable in order to grow. Location thus plays a critical role in the growth of a practice or practitioner. Let's look at Anna. Wanting to move back to Europe after London, she spent a year in Barcelona, hoping it would be an ideal transition before heading home to Athens. However, she was unable to grab any projects in or around the city, and her work continued to be concentrated in London. Having spent a great time connecting and collaborating with many Spanish designers, she moved to Athens in 2015 at the height of the crisis. Contrary to her expectations, though, she received much local work. Why? Because historical sites were being celebrated and a new crop of contemporary architecture was beginning to emerge. She found herself in the right place at the right time. Emra too found himself in the right place at the right time when he moved to Sydney and joined Steenson Warming, where he has practiced for the last 15 years. With much experience under his belt, he says, as you live and work in different parts of the world, your mind flexes. And once that happens, it is a matter of keeping those muscles working. Whether I worked in China or the US, it was not difficult. It was just a matter of adjusting to people. And that is what has kept him going. Tapio says he learned it the hard way. While it is easy when one starts off and there are just one or two partners, there comes a point when you need to establish a company. As part of the creative lot, I too have, like many others, brushed this under the carpet only for it to come and bite me back. For a small firm doing small work, it may be insignificant. But the minute you start taking more responsibility, doing bigger work, growing in your finances and infrastructure, it begins to matter for credit checks, audits, as well as your capability to deliver. Tapio feels you may be a large firm with team members scattered across the world. The client doesn't necessarily care about that, as long as an auditable company exists and the money flow is clear. With that respect, while the location may not be of impact, size surely matters. However, there is an interesting trend of consolidating lighting consultancy with other building consultancy services. And this makes a lot of sense to Tapio, for he says that the client sees your size and forges a sense of trust. Citing the example of Arab that offers architectural, structural, MEP, and lighting services, among others, he says a client would definitely go to them, not the three guys sitting in the room in a basement. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. We know that more and more young practitioners want to now branch off on their own, very often straight out of school. They crave an unhinged freedom of creative expression and feel compelled to establish themselves in their own right. Having worked with various organizations myself, large and small, and in different parts of the world, I refrained from going independent for a long time. But I do understand the advantages of working with an establishment as well. So I brought this up with Emra, who has spent the majority of his career with Steenson Warming. He agrees that larger setups provide an existing structure, infrastructure, security, and a testing ground for practitioners, and that too with minimal risk of their own. But he also believes that he can contribute to the world from where he is, doing what he does, without having to brand it with his own name. He feels supported and recognized, and in fact stronger as part of a team that makes up for his flaws. In short, so far there has not been enough reason for him to start his own studio. So why would he? Perhaps sometimes it is better to be a part of a bigger organization than a one-man army. And on the other hand, I guess for some that may mean being one among the 100. The question at hand then becomes, does size dictate location or does location define the size? And really, there is no straight answer to that. As we have seen, one may embark on the journey as small fish in a big pond. Very often, the small fish grows and wants to explore other watering holes, which may be bigger or in these cases smaller, but offering more wholesome experiences. But it is also essential to note that the transition is facilitated by size, not only that of the practice, the number of people or projects, but also the brand and its positioning. It is evident in today's market that independent consultants are building great brand equity, which allows them to position themselves freely. Finding the right opportunities or perhaps creating them can also transcend the limitations of space. The world is shrinking and we are hyper connected today, more than ever before. We all exist in a parallel virtual universe where there are no boundaries or segregations. The most critical aspect here is size. And given that there is no physical space to occupy, attention is now on how you can position your brand, garner mind space, and demand attention. This has also put us all on an equal footing to forge ahead on our own terms. Working on projects worldwide, Anna's perspective is rather common. The nature of international work assumes that the person you hire is not sitting next to you, and therefore systems are in place to negotiate that distance. However, given the current global crisis, the situation has taken an interesting turn. The pandemic has put many people and points in perspective. While it has made many introverted clients open up to the idea of long distance and cross-border collaborations, many extroverted clients have begun to question whether they really need to reach out so far and have instead turned to local markets and talent. Emra points out that while there are clients with whom you just cannot work virtually, with others things have become rather easy. As we negotiate virtual calls, we have become more intimate with one another. We are literally in each other's homes, far from formalities and just more accepting of one another. Tapio has consciously stepped away from the noise. For him, cultural contexts shape your thinking. But today, we all exist equally in collective contexts online. So while he has distanced himself from any particular communities, he is connected with online groups that pertain to the startup world, new technologies, and research, which allows for him to keep his attention focused and environment calm. I'm actually amazed to learn about one of LDC's most prominent projects, the Silo 468 in Helsinki, which was done in 2013 in collaboration with a software designer sitting in Miami. While the project has been widely acclaimed, awarded, and published since, Tapio is yet to meet his collaborator face to face. Creative engagement and innovation can lead to tremendous strengths, but creativity is not only about building beautiful designs. It also relates to devising survival strategies to overcome odds. We take a look at how these lighting designers have translated creativity into successful businesses for themselves. In an undeveloped market like Peru in the 1990s, because lighting design was not a recognized profession, Claudia had free rein to define her business, but she also had as many challenges to lay its foundations. Step one for her was to raise awareness and explain the potential to potential clients what lighting could achieve and what lighting design as a career could become. For this, she had to devise innovative ways to entice clients. So she targeted the marketing budgets of projects to convince them to assign funds. After all, it was easier to sell a building facade as a commodity than really to explain logic. She also started a lighting design magazine to raise awareness about the profession, to create value for the work that was being done, and subsequently heighten consultancy fees and business standards. She says, I did the hard job so that it would be easier for others who followed. Today, Claudia demonstrates her designs through nothing but virtual reality. Emra's take on business is to understand how it is perceived by other people and then adjust it on his end accordingly. It is said you are friends with someone for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Emra takes this and applies it with business. He says that one needs to be strategic in what they want to do, where they are going, and then streamline their way. Creativity for him is opening your mind and listening to the messages that you get every day and responding to them in a manner that paves your path. Steenson Warming's philosophy of doing good work for good people for good reason has stood over decades. And while its essence is retained, the ethos and messaging of the organization is rephrased periodically to keep it relevant. As a designer, Anna would like to stay far, far away from anything to do with business, as she feels all lighting designers should. But if they really have to get involved with all that, then this is what she has to say. Ideally, lighting designers should work like architects, with a business manager, creative director, and other positions of expertise. Having said this, she also points out that it is a question of scale. Not many lighting design studios can grow to a level that justifies such varied roles of management and creativity. Therefore, designers tend to do both. But how they manage it, she says, is a real miracle. Anna's success in Athens can largely be attributed to finding the right people to set up her studio with. Martina, her partner, also Bartlett bred, had more experience in Greece, was well versed locally, and complemented Anna in the perfect manner. They grew slowly and in the process sought much support from their peers through the IALD. Today, while they have a studio, it runs on a unique system wherein all the designers are freelance practitioners who work together as a collective. Having spent many years in lighting, Tapio felt compelled to redefine his work from that of a consultancy to design, real design. He laughs and he tells me, we say yes, yes, yes to all the clients, and then like a Trojan horse, smuggle design into the whole idea. With clients having limited knowledge of what to ask for, LDC took the initiative to create a co-designing process that they call foreshadowing, wherein they work with the client to identify problems that would be interesting for them to solve. Actually, more than problems, they identify opportunities. These could include design elements like the number of people visiting a project, the time spent there, memories created, social share, identity, and differentiation, among others. The designers identify and address these factors through light, media, sound, clever controls, remote management, operations, and even optics, to the extent of impacting revenue models. To facilitate this, LDC went on to developing and investing in technologies that led to startups such as Candletech, Revere, Dynamic Environment Groups, which together allow them to zoom out and offer the client an ecosystem from where solutions can either be selected individually or as packages. Using creativity to strategize business services, Tapio firmly believes that the more problems you can solve for your client, the happier they are. The Aurora at Cetas de Sevilla is a beautiful piece of parametric architecture by Jürgen Mayer that allows visitors to take the lift up to the top to view the entire city. But when the sun goes down, there's nothing much left to do there. Scandal over here identified an opportunity for the clients. Lighting the structure from below, which is what the client had asked for, would allow for the visitors to see the structure and architecture from a distance. However, what you really want here is for them to pay a fees and be inside the project. Therefore, they created a permanently installed nighttime light experience, which enticed a large number of people to visit the project after dark, resulting in heightened revenue. Taken as a turnkey model, they are now taking over the management contract, operated remotely through cameras, sensors, and data feeds. For Tapio, this project has nothing to do with lighting. They have designed a digital infrastructure that is laid onto an existing built structure, and that enables new business models, new experiences, and a new way of managing it. And that is what they have designed. While we have seen how each of these designers have innovated to pave their own paths and have creatively drawn from their experiences, it is imperative to understand from them what their eventual goals and how they would define them. Someone seeks happiness, another looks to strike balance, one plays on constantly challenging themselves, and another to leave a legacy. Each person defines success differently and on their own terms. And while each of them works variedly to achieve what they set out to do, their journeys are ever evolving, fluid, and constantly confronting and questioning their own constraints. Size and location are not milestones, neither are they constant. They are, in fact, constantly evolving parameters influenced by dimension, text, media, and time, among other factors. Each of these designers have experimented and continue to evolve their framework to further perpetuate their works, often merging, stitching, elongating, or overlapping these elements. Dimension. Situated in Australia, Emra has found success within a larger context. A highly certified, acclaimed, and awarded designer builds on the legacy of a reputed organization that he is a part of. The sanctity of the Gestalt is not diluted, and yet the independent paths stand their own. Emra has worked on projects across the globe of varying scales and typologies, and completed nearly 50 projects in the last year itself. Context. Straddling different countries, cultures, typologies, forms, and function, Anna has her fingers in multiple pies. She wishes she could focus on one thing at a time and really devote herself to specific tasks. But her wide array of interests keeps her on her toes and her creativity flowing. Media. Combining media and intersecting the physical with the digital to what is now called the phygital, Tapio has challenged the future of lighting design, encouraging its patrons to look ahead and beyond how it currently exists as a profession. And time. Claudia today is a globally celebrated designer, but in her own words, she is more famous in the rest of the world than in her own country. And while she aspires to bridge the gaps from a non existing entity to one that is slowly garnering recognition, she hopes that her efforts can encourage future generations to tap into their creativity and forge ahead. About one of her most popular projects, the BCP Affinity Building in Lima, she says, when a child touches the BCP panel and sees what happens to the facade, they think it is magic. I want them to know that it is not magic. It, in fact, is creativity. Each of these designers represent a part of the lighting community, and their journeys are reflected in many others as well. Size and location have played intrinsic roles, ever changing and evolving, which each have taken a step to do, but they are never defined, and their successes are independent. For success for them is propelled by their creativity, and their creativity is a manifestation of their passion for light, design, and lighting design. I'd like to thank each one of these designers for taking part and speaking with me and sharing their insights. Thank you very much.